Hey, how's it going? It's Intanger here. I'm doing one of these tier list videos. I saw someone else put up one just recently. I watched it and it had really great production value. It had all these clips of going to the different maps and showing some stock footage and stuff. It was all great. I like that part, but his actual rankings I thought were stupid. I didn't like his rankings at all, so I figured I'd make my own. It's not going to have as great a production value, but I'll give you my expert insight and opinion on all of these maps and which ones are the best. Even though most of them probably won't be available for quite a while after Ark Ascended comes out. These are the rankings based on Ark Survival Evolved, the one that I played for like 6 years. And basically, my choices for where I would main base, like what the ideal best overall map is, and that factors in mostly convenience factors, like how easy it is to get the best resources, how easy it is to get element. That's one of the most important late game resources, is just element, and so that's pretty much the top factor. But then besides that, great views, looks really cool, ease of getting around, and popularity if possible. But none of them had, no map had everything I wanted. There were several that were close. The one I ultimately chose as my number one for my final main base at the end of Ark was Ark Genesis. And the reasons why is it has the most easy access to the most element of any map. You can get way more than you could ever use, and you can get it any time. Doesn't matter what's going on in outer space. Doesn't matter if other people are doing boss fights. It doesn't matter what else is going on. You can always get a ridiculous amount of element unless somebody else just swept it like 20 minutes ago. But it's the easiest map to get almost every resource in the whole game. The only resources that were easier to get on other maps is giant bee honey, and I mean you can just do your own hives for that. You don't need to be able to get that from the map itself because you can just do it from hives. So it's my number one overall, even though there's some downsides. It wasn't as popular as some of the other maps because people had more or less moved on. But also the biomes. The biomes looked beautiful. I love the look of them. They were super immersive, so that's a plus. But yeah, overall, it had the most pluses and the least minuses. Oh, the Hex Market, that's another one. I just tried to record this video 5 minutes ago, but I realized my mic wasn't working the whole time, so I'm starting over here. And anyway, yeah, the Hex Market, I'm trying to make sure I remember all the same points. The Hex Market is fantastic. You can buy almost every resource in there, and some of them are the best way to get that resource, like paste, for example. You can just buy a ton of paste with the amount of hex that it will take you not even 5 minutes to get. You can slot cap on paste. So there's really no reason to get paste from anything else. And that's the way to go. So yeah, it's got element, it's got all these other resources, great views. The only downsides, yeah, is it's not popular anymore. Um, I'm gonna go kind of generally from top down and just pick my favorite ones. Some of the other ones that I thought were in contender for top map is Genesis 2. This is another great map. I love the sci-fi setting. I love all the end game content. I like a lot of the missions. It's the easiest map to earn hex on. This is both of these two maps. They have a hex market. They share the same hex currency, but it's way easier to earn your hex on Genesis 2. But you don't need to main base on Genesis 2 to do that. So what I would do is I had all my main bases on Genesis 1, and I would go occasionally and just load up on 2.5 million hex on Genesis 2 doing hunt missions, and then I'd come back here and spend it. So unfortunately, I couldn't get everything I wanted on one map because some of the cons on Genesis 2 is it's very unstable. I don't think that's necessarily a problem with the map itself so much as a problem with the game and the fact that Wildcard never fixed it. But people would crash Genesis 2 servers, I don't know, 15 times a day. It was absolutely ridiculous. Sometimes they were down more than they were up. You could never count on them being up. You could never count on them being up for 15 minutes after you transferred. So you would constantly lose things transferring with items to Genesis 2. It was terrible, just because of that stability issue. And I'm pretty sure it was duping. And people primarily duped on Genesis 2. I don't know if it was something to do with the map itself, just that's the popular servers that just happened to be on. Probably had something to do with the map itself. There was something that were able to crash on it. I don't know what it was because I didn't dupe. But this map went down more than any other map by like 20 times. So that's why I can't put it as S tier and I didn't put it on top. It's really a shame that I got to count it against the map because WildGuard didn't bother to fix it. But I mean, otherwise it would have been number one. You can get Element almost as easily as on Genesis 1. You can buy all the same Hex stuff just as easily, and you can earn Hex more easily, and it's more popular. And it still has great looking biomes, a really cool sci-fi setting. Really liked it. Another top one that I was considering strongly is Arc Extinction. I'm going to put that up here. This is another great map where it's very easy to get very large quantities of element. Not quite as large as you can get on Genesis maps, but still well more than enough than you would really realistically use unless you were just running 200 cloners at once, which nobody really needs. I mean, excuse me, I saw a couple of people who had 200 cloners out. I never saw them running them all, so I don't know what the hell they were doing with them all. Because it's really logistically a nightmare to even run that many, and I never saw anybody do it at all. So why they bothered building that many is beyond me. But yeah, it's a great overall map. It's got some really cool biomes. My favorite was the ice biome inside the snow dome. Once you're inside the dome, it gives you this like infinite horizon of, like a snow biome. Very immersive, very cool looking. It has this like serene beauty to it. It has this cool like ambient sound in there, background noise with wolves howling and stuff. Very cool. I used to like the city as well, but I got some traumatic memories of living in the sanctuary because it used to be people could lure high level, corrupted wyverns in there and decimate everything in sight. It was pretty lousy. So I still don't love the city. Also, there's no day-night cycle. I really like that there's a day-night cycle inside the artificial domes because it seems more immersive. It looks cooler. So let's see. Let's go down the list. So Aberration, I really like Aberration for a lot of reasons. It looks beautiful. It's got its own style. It's got its own way everything works, and it's got its own vibe. I think it's a really cool environment. And it's got a lot of really cool dinos on there that are, exclusive or were exclusive to it. But the problem is, it's the shittiest map in the game for getting element. It's terrible to get element. And since you need a large quantity of element for in-game play, I'm going to put it on the very bottom. I mean, I like the views. I wish I could get more out of this map. But because it's the scarcest element in the whole game, and because of all the other penalties it puts against you, where you can't fly and you can't go outside during the day, and just that sort of stuff. I mean, a good chunk of the map is not realistically as easy to travel on. Some good things about this map, though, is one of the things that I actually think is almost a negative, in my opinion, is that you could get so much metal on this map with so little effort that it basically completely distorted the entire economy of the entire game. It basically changed ingots from being the currency of the realm to so abundant that they were almost worthless. So like, you don't even need to be able to get your own ingots anymore because you can just, anybody will give you 10 truckloads of ingots for a relatively small amount of anything else these days, because this just overinflated the value of ingots out the wazoo. Before Aberration came out, ingots were the main currency that people had traded in. Anyway, so let's see. Crystal Isles is a pretty great map, actually. There's a lot going for it. It's a really convenient map for getting started on, especially. You can get wyverns right off the bat. You can get easy access to element without doing boss fights. You can get easy access to bee honey without having your own hives. It's got great access to almost every resource. It's got some really great looking views. It's got high-level wyverns. It's got wyvern milk. Oh, no, actually, it doesn't have a wyvern milk. It has the what do you call it? The primal crystals. So you could raise primal wyverns. So that's still a plus, though. So I'm going to put this, I would put it in A, but I'm kind of leaving A for the ones that are well-rounded and have everything you need for top tier. And this one, let me think. Does it deserve A tier? I mean, it is really easy to get a decent amount of element, but not anywhere near the quantities you can get from these others. So I'm going to put it in B. And let's see. Let's go to the next one, Lost Island. This one, I didn't get super deep into this one. I mean, by the time Lost Island came out, it was a great looking map. It was very pretty and vast, and it seemed like it had good access to most resources. But other than the Sonoma crops, there was nothing on it that was like importantly new. It felt like Ragnarok in a lot of ways. And when Ragnarok came out, it was a game changer and it was really awesome. But for end game play, um, it's not as it's not as easy to get such massive amounts of element. And so I'm gonna flesh out all the ranks of this a little more from top to bottom and not just put everything high up. So I'm gonna put Lost Island in C, and I'm gonna put Ragnarok in C2 for its impact to the game. Ragnarok honestly maybe could be higher, but I'm talking about end game, at the very end of the game, at the very end of the cycle. Which maps were the best, had the most perks, had the most access to all the resources. And both of these, you have to do the boss fights in order to get the element. And Crystal Isles, you can just go and find it on an island. And these two, you can just pick it up off the ground, for crying out loud. And this one, you can get such massive quantities from the veins that it's one of the top tiers. But yeah, Scorched Earth. This is another one. When it first came out, it had its own feel to it. It was really unique. It was kind of a game changer in a lot of ways. That's when Wyverns first came out. And for its impact, I mean, I would put it really high, but that's not what this list is about. Again, it's about at the end of the game, like which were the most ideal maps. And since this one was so old, and the Wyverns are on every other map now, and the penalties are so stiff, and it's pretty much only got one kind of biome, putting us way down on the bottom. You can actually get more element than you can on Aberration, but because of the other negatives, I'm still putting it way on the bottom here. It's a beautiful looking map, though. I like the look of the biome, even though it's just pretty much the one biome. The infinite sand deserts off into the horizon was just really cool looking. Sometimes during the storms and at night, when the colors were just right, man, it was quite atmospheric. I really liked it, but it just doesn't have enough perks to get anywhere near, some of these higher ones. I think this is supposed to be the island here. It just says Ark Survival Evolved. So the island, I'm going to put it... the island's perks, I'll go through the perks real quick. So it does have relatively easy access to the element through the boss fights. There's 3 different boss fights. You're always bound to be able to get enough tributes to do one of them. And ever since they increased the payout on boss fights, how much element you get, you actually get a pretty decent amount of element off the island. Not as much as these, and not as easily as on Crystal Isles, but pretty conveniently. This one also has the Ascension Cave, and it's there's only so many maps where you can gain another 15 levels. That is of value, but I already put these two pretty low, even though they do have that. But this is one of the coolest and first ones that you can use to get more levels. I'm going to go ahead and put it here on the C tier, mostly because of ease of element. It's just not quite as easy as on Crystal Isles, and access to many of the other resources is just not as good as on Crystal Isles either. Crystal Isles has abundant metal, abundant obsidian, abundant everything else, and this one doesn't have abundant. It doesn't have abundant metal. It doesn't have abundant of crystal. There's only a handful of spots for some resources, so yeah, it'll go lower. The center. This map is an old favorite of mine. I really loved it back in the day. It was a lot better than the regular island in a lot of ways. You would get a higher level distribution on all the animals. You get 150s a lot more frequently. You could get access to metal a lot better because, like I said, there was only a handful of spots that had great metal. Actually, on the very early of the game on the island, that you could get metal in the volcano. There was mountains of it, but everybody went there. So even though it was super abundant, there was a lot of competition. But the center had rich metal nodes all over the place, so it was really great for getting a lot of metal, but not so super abundant that it completely destroyed the economy like Aberration did. But anyway, we're talking about end game, and There are boss fights on here. These used to have the crappiest boss fight payouts. They were so bad that they weren't even worth the trouble because you had to get I think you still had to get 25 of every tribute. You'd fight two bosses at once, but they both gave you just nothing, just garbage amounts of element. And they did double it, but it's still hardly worth it. I mean, you get so little compared to the amount of effort to get all the tributes that it's a pretty measly amount of element. There's no other way to get element. One perk about the center though is that you can get 11 different artifacts, all the original artifacts on this map with a 30-second cooldown. So you could go into those caves and load up on, 200 of them at once and have all the artifacts you'll ever need, which is a pretty great perk, but you don't need to main base on it to do that. You can just make a temporary outpost, load up on all the artifacts, and then slowly transfer them home, six, however many at a time, 11 at a time. So even though it's a great map, and I really enjoyed it back in the day, for endgame, it's on the bottom. It's really not got a lot going for it for endgame. The element access is too low. The metal access is fine, but metal's just not really a hard to get commodity anywhere, so it doesn't matter. Valguero, I never got into this map. It seemed to have no real great aspects to it. It was relatively mediocre, relatively small, nothing new. And I mean, it was fine-ish, but there was just no good reason to get into it at all, so I never did. So I'm going to put it way on the bottom. And yeah, some of these other guys' tier ranks, he was ranking some of these that were just pointless maps, way higher. Now here's the last map to come out, Fjordur. This one had a lot of perks. It had easy access to element in many locations. You didn't have to do the boss fight, but you could do the boss fight. There was world bosses. There was the island bosses. There was a unique boss. There was lots of really awesome perks. You could get the 190 bonus where you get to use the hammer, which was awesome. It had lots of great views. It had multiple realms. It had easy travel with the I guess it's kind of like a Bifrost thing where you could just travel anywhere, just like on Genesis. And it had a bee cave. I mean, it had just about everything. You couldn't get as abundant of element as you can get from the Genesises or Extinction, but you could casually, just by doing random adventures and boss fights, get a ton of element. And you could get actually a lot of element from those world bosses with relatively few resources, like one decent Giga or a handful of decent Rexes and a Yudi. You could get plenty of element. Actually, and you don't even need to fight the bosses. So in a lot of ways, this gave you most convenient access, multiple ways to most resources. It had beaver dams. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Maybe I should have ranked a little bit more. But yeah, Ragnarok had great beaver dams. I think Lost Island had beaver dams. I can't remember. Ragnarok had great beaver dams for paste. But yeah, like I said, you can just buy paste on the Hex Market. It's the easiest way in the whole game. But I'm gonna rank Fjordur way near the top. I'm gonna go ahead and rank it S. The only reason I didn't play Fjordur more is because it seemed like all the servers were a little overcrowded. I do like a play on a server with a lot of people, but some of these were so overcrowded that the server was very laggy, and you couldn't find a really cool base location to build in that didn't have somebody else's mega base nearby. But that's, I mean, if I tried harder, I could have found it. And it really was one of the best maps in the whole game. It's one of the most convenient maps in the whole game. One of the best well-rounded maps in the whole game. So I'm going to go ahead and put it up on S tier. And yeah, that's pretty much the list. That's how I see them. Either one of these I would have been happy settling on. I picked Genesis ultimately. I thought it had prettier looking biomes, less lag. Hex Market, it's pretty great. The Hex Market really is a huge perk. When they first added the Hex Market, I hated it. I thought it was stupid and it didn't have any place in a survival game. and it really doesn't. But they left it in the game, and since it is there, and since it's so overpowered, and it's almost like a cheat, I mean, I guess I'm going to use it. It's super convenient, so I'm going to go ahead and count it for what it's worth, and it's worth a lot. So that one, maybe I shouldn't put Fjordur on the same level. But I've got Genesis 2 on A, even though it also has the same hex market, and I'm just counting against it because the servers were so unstable. Yeah, actually, maybe I should put Fjordur down here because a lot of these servers were semi-unstable too, just because there were so many people on them. Well, I don't know. I can't really decide S or A, but it's near the top. Fjordur was a great, well-rounded map, and it's one of the only unofficial maps that had, like its own custom boss and really awesome perks like that hammer. That was really cool. Oh, also, it's got 200 runes. Okay, so it does. I'll definitely put it in the S firmly because it's also got those runes you can get to unlock 10 extra levels. That's a huge bonus, and those were actually a lot of fun to get. So yeah, that's the way I'll see it right here. This seems fair and this seems accurate. But yeah, a lot of these maps were just this Valguero is one of the most pointless and worthless maps in the whole game, if you ask me. I don't know if anybody played it. Like, it is dead. It was dead as a doornail near the end of the cluster, man. There was nobody on any of them. I would check the list, and there'd be like 0 or 1 on every map, on every server for Valguero. So I mean, there was just nothing useful about it. And it didn't have even great views to rival some of the others that had come before it. So, yeah, I just had nothing going for it. I can't believe the other guy ranked it higher than that. But yeah, Crystal Isles actually was a great map and very well rounded and had a lot of cool perks, had a lot of access to things. It had those Crystal Wyverns. You could get a Crystal Wyvern literally within less than an hour of starting the game. And I did, but actually I didn't go straight for Crystal Isles. What I would do is if I made a new character. This is how I started on PC. I made a new character. I went to the island, and I grabbed a bunch of notes until I got like level 65 or whatever it was. Then I went to Crystal and got a Wyvern within, like 10, 15 minutes. Just taming one of the random wandering ones with regular Crystal, and I got a good foothold on Crystal Isles. And then when I was comfortable, I moved over to Genesis. I also had outposts on several of the other maps, but my main base is throughout my PC run, which was the end of my ARC career. Basically, I transferred from PlayStation to PC and started all over fresh. Yeah, I main based on Crystal Isles and ARC Genesis only. Those are the only ones. But yeah, back on PS4, I main based on almost every map. I main based on the island at one point. I main based on Center multiple times. I main based on Ragnarok. I had a starting playthrough on Lost Island until they opened up transfers, and then I got bored. I had a pretty sweet outpost on Aberration. It wasn't a main base, but it was a pretty fleshed out outpost that I shared with several other people. I never had a main base on Scorched. I had really tiny outposts on rafts that I parked around the obelisks. But yeah, a lot of great memories on these maps. I had a great base on Gen 2 on PS4. That was my main base. I had a great breeding outpost base on Genesis on PS4 also. And I had a great main base on Fjordur when it was new before transfers opened up. And I mean, it wasn't a huge main base, but it was a mainish base at the time. It wasn't huge, but it was really cool. I kind of made a seamlessly integrated base into the sanctuary area, and it got completely decimated by one of those high-level wyverns that somebody lured into the city or glitched into the city. I don't know. But yeah, I had a main base on both PC and PS4 on Crystal Isles in the same neighborhood in the floating islands, and it was a great map. I loved it. It's one of the best free maps. Fjordur and Crystal Isles were probably the best free maps, but I also spent a ton of time on Ragnarok because Ragnarok was one of the first awesome free maps, and I guess Center was the first pretty awesome free map. But by now standards, it's the worst because every other map has been better. But at the time, it was pretty amazing. Anyway, the list, and kind of rambled on about how I feel about them. Anyhow, that's the video, guys. Have a good one. See you next time.